The scent of ash clung to the cold morning air, a ghost of what once was. Jack Mitchell stood at the end of the long dirt driveway, his weathered army rucksack slung over one broad shoulder. 6 years of military discipline had hardened his body and sharpened his mind, but nothing in the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan had prepared him for this homecoming. Where the two-story farmhouse should have stood, the white clapboard structure his great-grandfather had built with his own hands, there was only a blackened skeleton reaching toward the Idaho sky. His throat tightened. The official call had come 3 weeks ago, delivered with military precision by a sympathetic voice on the other end of a satellite connection. William Mitchell, 63, deceased. Farm destroyed by fire. Electrical accident, according to preliminary reports. Jack had immediately requested emergency leave, but military bureaucracy moved with glacial slowness. Too slow for a proper funeral. Too slow for goodbyes. The crunch of tires on gravel pulled his attention to the approaching sheriff's vehicle. Sheriff Donovan emerged, his substantial belly straining against his tan uniform, his expression a practiced blend of authority and condolence. "My condolences, son. Your father was well respected around here. Tragic accident. Faulty wiring in the barn spread to the main house. The fire marshal's report is pretty conclusive." Jack's jaw tightened. "My father checked every inch of electrical work twice a year. He replaced half the system last spring." Sheriff Donovan's gaze slid away, focusing on the charred remains. "Reports say otherwise. We've done our due diligence. Case closed as far as the county is concerned." The dismissal hung in the air between them. Something cold settled in Jack's stomach, a soldier's instinct for hidden danger. "The insurance company will want to speak with you about the settlement, and you'll need to figure out what to do with this land. It's not looking good, Jack, not good at all." With that inadequate epitaph, Donovan retreated to his vehicle, leaving Jack alone with the ruins of his past and the unsettling certainty that something wasn't right. A small blue sedan approached, kicking up dust along the driveway. The Hendersons from the neighboring farm emerged with a small figure between them. Jack's heart stuttered at the sight of her. Lily, his daughter, 7 years old and seemingly taller than the last video call just 2 months ago. Her dark hair was braided neatly down her back, her green eyes, so like her mother's, widened at the sight of him. For a painful moment she hesitated, suddenly shy with the father who had been more photographed than presence. Then something broke inside her, and she was running her small sneakers, pounding the dirt. Daddy Jack dropped to one knee, catching her as she launched herself into his arms. The solid weight of her against his chest unlocked something rusted inside him. She smelled of apple shampoo and the sugary cereal he'd never allowed when he was home. "You're really back, forever back?" The question pierced him. He'd never lied to Lily, not even when her mother had left them both for a new life in California, with a pharmaceutical executive too overwhelmed by military wifehood and motherhood to continue. He wouldn't start lying now. "I'm back for as long as you need me, I promise." Mrs. Henderson approached with Lily's small suitcase, her weathered face creased with genuine sympathy. "She's been so brave, Jack. But she needs her father now. Thank you for taking care of her." Jack's voice roughened with the inadequacy of the words. She'd just gotten off the school bus. "Came home to find—" Mrs. Henderson's voice faltered, her eyes darting meaningfully to Lily. The child hadn't seen the fire, had been spared that trauma, at least, but discovering the aftermath and losing her grandfather had been devastating enough. Jack stood, Lily still clinging to him like a koala, her face buried in his neck. The Hendersons explained the practical matters: Lily's school schedule. Her favorite foods, now apparently hot dogs, had been replaced by macaroni and cheese, the name of her pediatrician. Normal life details that felt surreal against the backdrop of destruction. After they left, Jack surveyed what remained of the family property, Lily quiet but watchful in his arms. Beyond the house, ruins, and charred barn, stood the large metal warehouse his father had used for equipment storage. It appeared to have escaped the worst of the fire, its corrugated walls discolored by smoke, but structurally intact. "Is that where we're going to live now?" Lily's small voice vibrated against his collarbone. "For a little while, until we figure things out." He carried her across the yard, careful to keep her eyes away from the most devastating destruction. The warehouse door protested with a metallic groan as he pushed it open. Inside, farm equipment cast long shadows in the dim light filtering through dust-covered windows. A small office area in the corner might be convertible to living space. Not ideal, but he'd slept in worse conditions. Lily wiggled to be put down, her natural curiosity temporarily overcoming her grief and shyness. Jack watched her explore, amazed at how she'd grown while he'd been deployed. Her movements contained an echo of her mother's grace, but there was something of his father in her, too, a deliberate thoughtfulness as she examined her new surroundings. A sleek black sedan pulled up outside, incongruously clean against the rural backdrop. The man who emerged wore an expensive suit and carried a leather portfolio with an air of clinical detachment. He introduced himself with practiced smoothness. "Arthur Davies, Senior Claims Adjuster. My condolences for your loss." The words held all the warmth of an automated message. Jack positioned himself slightly in front of Lily, a protective stance he wasn't even conscious of assuming. Davies flipped open his portfolio. "Our records indicate your father had a substantial life insurance policy naming you as the sole beneficiary. The farm itself was insured for a considerable sum. Farming is a tough business these days. We understand your father was experiencing financial difficulties in his final years." The implication hung in the air, sharp as a blade. Jack's hands curled into fists. "My father was a proud man. He would never." But fires are a convenient solution to financial problems, especially for someone with your particular skill set. A man with military background knows a thing or two about starting fires. Wouldn't you say? Rage surged through Jack's system, hot and electric. His voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "Are you accusing me of something?" For the first time, a flicker of something other than professional detachment appeared in Davy's eyes, a smug satisfaction. "I'm merely exploring all possibilities. We'll be conducting a thorough investigation. Don't leave the county." With that parting shot, he returned to his air-conditioned car, leaving a cloud of dust and suspicion in his wake. "Daddy, why was that man mad at you?" Lily had pressed herself against his leg, her small face upturned and worried. Jack knelt to her level, forcing his features to relax. "Some people jump to wrong conclusions when they don't have all the facts. It's our job to find the truth." She nodded solemnly, accepting this explanation with a child's faith that her father could fix any problem. Jack wished he shared her confidence. The rest of the day passed in a blur of practical matters. Jack converted the office space into a makeshift bedroom, using sleeping bags and supplies from his military duffel. He drove into town for groceries and basic necessities, immediately noticing the change in atmosphere. People who had known him since childhood averted their gaze, conversations halting when he approached. The poison of suspicion had already spread. By evening, exhaustion hung heavy on both of them. Lily picked at her dinner, a simple meal of sandwiches and fruit. The events of the day had taken their toll, her small shoulders drooping with fatigue. After tucking her into the sleeping bag with her stuffed rabbit, somehow salvaged from the house before the fire, Jack stepped outside. The Idaho night was clear and cold, stars pricking the darkness with painful brilliance. He walked toward the burned-out shell of the house, needing to confront the destruction fully alone. The familiar layout was still discernible beneath the charred remains, the kitchen where his father had taught him to make pancakes, the living room with its stone fireplace, where they'd spent winter evenings, the staircase that led to his childhood bedroom. All reduced to ash and twisted metal. A movement at the edge of his vision jerked him to alertness, his body automatically shifting into a defensive stance. At the perimeter of the property, near a stand of juniper trees, a ghostly shape materialized in the moonlight. A dog, large and powerful, its coat a striking mix of gray and white, unmistakably a German shepherd. Jack's breath caught. Ranger, the dog, watched him, its posture alert but wary, ready to bolt at the slightest provocation. This wasn't the friendly companion Jack remembered from his last leave. This animal had the bearing of something that had gone feral, distrustful of human contact. Yet there was intelligence in its gaze and awareness that seemed almost supernatural in the moonlight. William Mitchell had always kept German shepherds prizing their intelligence and loyalty. Ranger had been his latest dog Jack had only met briefly before his last deployment. His father's letters had mentioned the dog going missing shortly after Jack left. Yet here it was, watching the ruins of its former home with an intensity that mirrored Jack's own grief. Jack slowly extended his hand, making a soft clicking noise with his tongue, the way his father had always called his dogs. Ranger's ears pricked forward, but he maintained his distance, studying Jack with amber eyes that reflected the moonlight. After a long moment of mutual assessment, the dog turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving Jack with the unsettling feeling that he'd just failed some kind of test. Inside the warehouse, Jack found Lily sitting up in her sleeping bag, wide awake and frightened. I had a bad dream. Grandpa was calling for help, but I couldn't find him. Jack gathered her against him, feeling helpless against the weight of her grief. I miss him too, Pumpkin. Do you think he was scared? When the fire happened, the innocent question stabbed through him. My dad was the bravest man I've ever known. And do you know what brave means? It doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when you are scared. She nodded against his chest, absorbing this definition. After a while, her breathing slowed into the regular rhythm of sleep. Jack remained awake, staring at the metal ceiling, his mind churning with questions. The insurance investigator's insinuations, the sheriff's hasty dismissal, the community's sudden coldness, and now the reappearance of his father's day wild but watchful. Nothing about this felt like a simple accident. Morning brought a semblance of routine. Jack woke before dawn, habits formed during years of military service impossible to break. He busied himself making the warehouse more livable, rigging a makeshift shower in one corner, setting up a camping stove for cooking. Lily slept late, her body processing grief through exhaustion. When she finally stirred, her first question caught him by surprise. Did I really see a dog last night, or was that part of my dream? Jack paused in his work. That was real. I think it might be Ranger Grandpa's dog. Her face brightened momentarily. Can we keep him? He's gone wild, Lily. He's not a pet anymore. He might be dangerous. But he's all alone now, like us. The simple observation struck him with unexpected force. Yes, they were alone, a half-present father, a child who'd lost too much, and a dog who'd gone feral after his master's death. A broken triangle of survivors. We can try to make friends with him, but slowly. He needs to learn to trust us. After breakfast, Jack took Lily to survey the property in daylight. He needed to understand what had happened, and keeping her close felt safer than leaving her alone, despite the grim surroundings. They walked the perimeter of the destruction, Jack noting details with a soldier's eye. The pattern of the burn, the origin point near the barn's electrical panel, the way the fire had swept toward the house with devastating efficiency. Lily stayed close, her small hand in his, asking occasional questions that revealed her sharp mind. Why is that part more burned than the other parts? Did the fire people try to save Grandpa's things? Where did all the animals go? This last question had been bothering Jack as well. The farm had housed chickens, 2 milk cows, and his father's prized pair of draft horses. No animal remains had been mentioned in the reports. Had someone rescued them, or had they been sold before the fire? A movement near the juniper stand caught his attention. Ranger was back, observing them from a distance. Lily spotted him a moment later, her grip on Jack's hand tightening with excitement. There he is. Can I pet him? Not yet. He's scared of people right now. But maybe we can show him we're friendly. Jack led her to the warehouse and returned with 2 bowls, one filled with water, the other with some of the lunch meat from their sandwiches. He placed them at the midpoint between themselves and the watching dog, then retreated with Lily to a respectful distance. Ranger eyed the offering suspiciously, his powerful body tense and ready for flight. Jack and Lily sat on the ground, making themselves smaller, less threatening. After what seemed like an eternity, the dog approached the bowls with cautious dignity. He drank deeply, then took the meat in one efficient movement before retreating to his observation post. He's hungry, Lily whispered. Doesn't anyone feed him? I think he's been hunting for himself, but we can keep leaving food for him. This became their morning ritual over the next few days. Each day they would leave food and water, retreating to watch from a distance. Each day, Ranger would approach a little sooner, stay a little longer, retreat a little less far. Jack recognized the slow building of trust. He'd used similar tactics with wary villagers in Afghanistan, the gradual establishment of mutual respect and understanding. Meanwhile, Jack began the process of investigating his father's death more thoroughly. He started with practical matters, visiting the county records office to review the official fire investigation report. The document was thorough but felt strangely perfunctory, its conclusion of accidental electrical fire stated with absolute certainty, despite what Jack considered insufficient evidence. His next stop was Williams Bank. The accounts told a concerning story. While not destitute, his father had indeed been experiencing financial pressure. Several large withdrawals had been made in the months before the fire with no clear explanation of where the money had gone. More troublingly, there was a pattern of declining deposits from crop sales, suggesting the farm's productivity had been suffering. This last piece of information aligned with scattered comments in his father's recent letters, references to disappointing yields and concerns about soil quality. At the time, Jack had attributed it to the usual farmers' complaints about conditions beyond their control. Now he wondered if there was something more significant behind those casual mentions. The local feed store provided another piece of the puzzle. The owner, an old friend of Williams named Henry, was one of the few townspeople who didn't immediately clam up at the sight of Jack. Your dad was worried about something, Henry admitted, weighing out nails into a paper bag. Started about 2 years ago. His crops weren't doing right, even though he was following the same methods he'd used for decades. He thought something was wrong with that new fertilizer everyone's been switching to. What fertilizer? That green tech stuff. Nutri-soil, they call it. Supposed to increase yields by some crazy amount. Your dad tried it one season, but he didn't like what it did to his land. Said the soil felt wrong afterward, like it had been cooked instead of nourished. Jack pocketed this information, adding it to his growing mental file. Back at the warehouse, he found Lily sitting cross-legged on the floor, carefully coloring in a book Mrs. Henderson had brought from town. She looked up as he entered, her expression brightening. Ranger came closer today. He almost let me touch him, but then got scared at the last minute. Jack smiled, genuinely pleased at this development. That's great progress. He's learning to trust you. I told him about Grandpa. Do you think he misses him too? The innocent question caught Jack off guard. I'm sure he does in his own way. That evening, as the sunset painted the damaged farm in deceptively beautiful hues of gold and purple, Jack spotted a pristine white SUV making its way up the drive. The vehicle stopped at a respectful distance from the warehouse, and a man emerged, tall, silver-haired, dressed in clothing that managed to appear both casual and expensive simultaneously. His smile revealed perfect white teeth as he approached with his hand extended. Victor Hammond, CEO of Green Tech Industries. I wanted to personally express my condolences about William. He was a respected member of our agricultural community. Jack accepted the handshake, automatically noting the man's firm grip and direct gaze. There was something calculated in his expression, an assessment happening behind the practiced sympathy. Thank you. Did you know my father well? Not as well as I would have liked. He was something of a traditionalist when it came to farming methods. We had our philosophical differences. Jack heard the warehouse door open behind him. Lily emerged, curious about their visitor. Hammond's attention immediately shifted to her, his smile widening. And who might this young lady be? Before Jack could intervene, Lily had introduced herself with the straightforward confidence of childhood. Hammond knelt to her level, producing a small candy from his pocket with the flourish of a magician. Jack stepped forward instinctively. She doesn't take candy from strangers. Hammond rose smoothly, pocketing the rejected treat. Wise policy. You must be very proud of such a well-mannered daughter. His attention shifted to the property, surveying the destruction with what appeared to be genuine regret. Such a shame about the fire. Williams' farm was one of the oldest in the county. But perhaps there's a silver lining to be found. What kind of silver lining comes from a man burning to death in his home? Jack's voice had hardened, all pretense of politeness evaporating. Hammond didn't flinch at the direct question. I meant for you and your daughter, of course. Managing a farm is difficult work, especially for someone transitioning from military service. Many returning veterans find it challenging to adapt. I've been helping several local farmers transition to more comfortable arrangements. You're buying their land, offering fair market value for properties that might otherwise become financial burdens. In your case, I'd be willing to make an extremely generous offer despite the fire damage. Enough for you to relocate somewhere more suitable for raising a child. Jack felt Lily press against his leg, suddenly quiet. Hammond glanced down at her, then past them both. His expression changed subtly as he spotted something beyond the warehouse. Jack turned to see Ranger standing at the edge of the property, watching them with intense focus. Is that William's dog? Hammond's voice held a note of surprise. I thought it had disappeared years ago. He's still around. Not very friendly these days. Hammond studied the animal with an unreadable expression. Feral animals can be unpredictable, dangerous even, especially around children. You might want to contact animal control before there's an incident. The threat was veiled but unmistakable. Jack stepped forward, using his height advantage to look down at Hammond. We're doing fine, thanks. Ranger's family. Hammond's smile never wavered, but something cold entered his eyes. Family is important, isn't it? We do anything to protect them. He glanced meaningfully at Lily. Think about my offer, Mr. Mitchell. This land holds painful memories now. A fresh start might be best for everyone. As Hammond drove away, Jack felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. The conversation replayed in his mind, each word taking on potential double meanings. Why would the CEO of an agricultural corporation personally visit to offer condolences to the son of a farmer who rejected his products? Lily tugged at his hand. I don't like that man. He smiles, but his eyes are mad. Children often saw what adults missed, their perceptions unclouded by social niceties. Jack squeezed her hand. I don't like him either. Let's go make dinner. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Jack sat at the small, folding table they'd set up as a dining area. Hammond's visit had catalyzed the vague suspicions that had been forming since his arrival. He made a list of the inconsistencies and questions. The fire's convenient timing. The missing farm animals. Dad's financial troubles and unexplained withdrawals. The crop yield problems after one season of Nutri-Soil. Hammond's unusual personal interest in the property. Sheriff's hasty conclusion about the cause. None of these alone proved anything sinister, but together they formed a pattern that his military training wouldn't let him dismiss. Something was very wrong here, and it centered around his father's farm and his resistance to whatever green tech was promoting. The following morning brought a new development. Lily discovered something while playing near the less damaged section of the house, a partially burned photograph that had somehow survived the fire. She brought it to Jack with the solemn importance of a major discovery. Look what I found, it's Grandpa. And that man from yesterday? Jack examined the photograph with growing unease. It showed a younger version of his father standing beside Hammond, both men smiling in front of what appeared to be a university agricultural building. They looked like friends, colleagues even, which contradicted Hammond's claim of not knowing William well. Good detective work, Lily. This is an important clue. Her face brightened at the praise. Are we detectives now? Like in my books? Something like that. We're trying to find out the truth about what happened to Grandpa. Like a treasure hunt, but for answers instead of gold. Jack smiled at her characterization. Exactly like that. Later that day, while Lily napped still exhausted from the emotional upheaval of the past weeks, Jack noticed Ranger behaving strangely. The dog had been gradually getting closer to their daily food offerings, sometimes staying nearby for an hour or more. Today, however, he seemed agitated, pacing at the edge of the property, occasionally looking back at Jack as if trying to communicate something. Remembering his father's way with animals, Jack decided to take a risk. He walked slowly toward Ranger, speaking in a low, calm voice. What is it, boy? What are you trying to tell me? To his surprise, Ranger didn't retreat. The dog watched him approach, then deliberately turned and trotted a few yards away, stopping to look back as if checking whether Jack was following. The behavior was so purposeful that Jack found himself complying, keeping a respectful distance, but following as Ranger led him past the burned barn toward an area of the property he hadn't yet thoroughly examined. The dog stopped at what appeared to be the foundation of an old outbuilding long since removed. The concrete pad was cracked and weathered, partially overgrown with weeds. Ranger went directly to a specific section and began pawing at the surface with increasing urgency, whining softly in frustration when his claws made no impression on the hard material. Jack knelt beside the agitated animal, studying the area Ranger was so focused on. The concrete appeared uniform, but as he ran his hands over the surface, he detected a faint seam, not a natural crack, but a deliberate cut made with precision. Someone had modified this foundation after it was poured. You're showing me something important, aren't you? Ranger's intelligent eyes fixed on him with an intensity that felt almost human. Jack returned to the warehouse for tools, bringing back a crowbar and sledgehammer. The dog watched with apparent approval as Jack positioned the crowbar into the seam and struck it with the hammer, sending vibrations through the ground. It took nearly 30 minutes of exhausting work before a section of concrete roughly 2 feet square finally gave way. Jack levered it up and pushed it aside, revealing a cavity beneath. Nestled inside was a fireproof safe, similar to those used for document protection. Ranger let out a soft bark, his tail giving a single satisfied wag. Jack extracted the safe, noting its substantial weight. It was locked, of course, but the model was one he recognized. His father had always preferred mechanical locks to digital ones. From his Army days, Jack had acquired certain skills that weren't part of the official training curriculum. He returned to the warehouse for his kit, a small leather pouch containing lock-picking tools. As he worked on the lock, Lily emerged from her nap, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She stopped in surprise at the sight of Ranger sitting just a few feet from Jack, watching the proceedings with apparent interest. "You found the treasure," Lily whispered, her eyes wide with excitement. "Maybe. Let's see what's inside." The lock finally yielded with a satisfying click. Jack opened the safe to reveal three items: a thick leather-bound journal, a silver USB drive, and a manila envelope. He opened the journal first, recognizing his father's meticulous handwriting. The entries began 18 months earlier, documenting William's growing concerns about changes in the local agricultural community. The first entry set the tone: "Something is happening to the land. I can feel it in the soil, see it in the crops. Ever since green tech came to the county, things have been changing, and not for the better. Their Nutri soil produced an impressive yield last season, I'll give them that, but the aftermath is troubling. The soil structure is deteriorating rapidly. It's like the land has been hollowed out from within." Subsequent entries detailed William's systematic investigation, soil samples from his own fields and neighboring farms, crop yields, water quality tests from the creek that ran through the property. He had approached his concerns with the methodical precision of a scientist, documenting every observation and result. The journal entries grew increasingly urgent as months passed. "Hammond visited again today. Third time this month. The offer to buy increased, but so did the pressure. He mentioned how unfortunate it would be if I couldn't make my loan payments." "How does he know about my loan situation?" "The bank president plays golf with him every Sunday." "That's how. This isn't just about fertilizer anymore. They want the land, all of it." The final entries were the most disturbing. "Found evidence of what Nutri-Soil really does to the soil microbiome. It's not just fertilizer, it's systemic destruction. First-year yields increase dramatically, but it kills everything beneficial in the soil. By year 3, nothing will grow without their proprietary soil restoration treatment. It's not farming, it's addiction. They're making the land dependent on their chemicals, then buying it for pennies when farmers can't afford the treatments. I've documented everything. Hammond knows I'm on to him. He made threats today, not direct, but clear enough. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident." The last entry was dated 3 days before the fire. Jack closed the journal, his hands shaking with a combination of grief and rage. His father had been murdered, not for rejecting modern farming methods, but for uncovering a corporate conspiracy to deliberately destroy farmland for profit. Lily had been silently looking at the journal's pages, too young to read most of the words, but sensing their importance. What did Grandpa write about? Jack considered how to explain corporate greed and environmental destruction to a 7-year-old. "Bad people are hurting the farms to make farmers sell their land for cheap." Grandpa figured it out, and they didn't want him telling anyone. Her small face scrunched in concentration as she processed this. That's why they made the fire, to keep Grandpa quiet. The direct question struck him like a physical blow. "I think so, yes. Then we have to tell everyone, make the bad people go to jail." Her simple moral clarity was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Jack wished justice could be that straightforward. "We will, but we need more proof first. People might not believe us without it." He turned his attention to the USB drive, but without a computer, he couldn't access its contents yet. The manila envelope, however, contained what appeared to be printouts of email exchanges between Hammond and various green tech executives. The language was carefully coded, but the meaning was clear to anyone reading between the lines. "The Mitchell property remains the final holdout in Section 7. His resistance is impacting the timeline for Phase 2. Expedite the acquisition protocol. I don't want any more delays." Jack stared at the dates. This email had been sent 1 week before the fire. Ranger had remained nearby throughout this discovery, watching with apparent understanding. Now, as the implications of what they'd found sank in, the dog moved closer to Jack, allowing physical contact for the first time. Jack absently stroked the animal's thick fur, his mind racing with what to do next. "We need legal help, someone outside local influence." As if in response to his thoughts, Lily pointed to something partially visible beneath where the safe had been. "It's another paper." Jack carefully extracted a business card that had been taped to the bottom of the cavity. "Rebecca Chen, attorney at law, with an address in Boise, 40 miles away." On the back, in his father's handwriting, "Trust her. She has copies. Jack felt a surge of pride in his father's foresight. Even facing threats, William had created contingency plans, leaving breadcrumbs for Jack to follow. The old man had been 3 steps ahead, just as he'd taught Jack to be in chess games during his childhood. We need to go see Ms. Chen tomorrow. She might have more information that can help us. But what if the bad men try to stop us? Lily's voice was small but not fearful. She was assessing threats like the daughter of a soldier and a practical farmer. We'll be careful, and we have Ranger to help protect us. At the sound of his name, the dog's ears pricked forward. In that moment, something shifted in their relationship. Ranger moved closer to Lily, sniffing her gently before sitting beside her, his powerful body positioned protectively. Jack realized they had formed something unexpected in the midst of tragedy, a unit bound by shared purpose and growing trust. A broken family reforging itself into something new and determined. The next morning, Jack packed the journal, USB drive, and documents into his rucksack. He hesitated over whether to bring Lily with him to Boise. Leaving her alone at the warehouse felt dangerous, but exposing her to potential confrontations seemed equally risky. His decision was made when he spotted a mud-splattered pickup truck parked on the county road near their driveway, its occupant watching the property through binoculars. They were already being monitored. "Pack your backpack, sweetheart. We're taking a little trip." Ranger watched them prepare with apparent anxiety, pacing near the warehouse door. When Jack opened the pickup truck door for Lily the dog, surprised them both by jumping into the back seat, clearly unwilling to be left behind. "I guess he's coming too." Lily giggled, the sound a welcome relief from the tension of the past days. The drive to Boise was uneventful, but Jack remained vigilant, checking the rearview mirror frequently for signs of pursuit. They located Rebecca Chen's office in a modest professional building downtown. The attorney was younger than Jack expected, perhaps in her mid-30s, with an air of focused competence that reminded him of the better military lawyers he'd encountered. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of them, a battle-hardened soldier, a solemn child, and a semi-feral German shepherd waiting in the outer office. William Mitchell's son, she gestured them into her private office, eyeing Ranger with mild concern. "He comes with us," Jack stated firmly. "He's the one who found my father's evidence." Chen raised an eyebrow but didn't object. Once inside with the door closed, Jack laid out everything they'd discovered: the journal, the emails, the circumstances of the fire. Chen listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. "Your father came to me 6 months ago," she finally said. "He was building a case against Green Tech, documenting the progressive soil destruction caused by their products. He suspected they were engaged in environmental crimes, but needed more evidence to prove it. This was his contingency plan." She unlocked a drawer in her desk and removed a sealed envelope. "Your father left this with me to be given to you if anything happened to him." Inside was a detailed dossier, chemical analyses of soil samples, satellite imagery showing the progressive degradation of farmland, where Nutri-Soil had been used, and most damning of all, an internal Green Tech memo outlining their land acquisition strategy. The document explicitly stated that Nutri-Soil was designed to create dependency cycles in agricultural land, forcing farmers into financial distress within 3-5 years of initial use. "You understand what this means?" Chen's voice was grim. "Your father was killed to prevent this information from becoming public." "I need to get these samples analyzed independently," Jack said, touching the evidence bags of soil his father had collected. "And we need to access whatever is on this USB drive." Chen nodded. "I have contacts at the State Environmental Protection Office who can help with the soil analysis, and I can download the drive contents here." While the attorney set up her computer, Lily had settled into a corner of the office with a coloring book Chen had thoughtfully provided for young clients. Ranger positioned himself beside her, his alert gaze continuously sweeping the room. The drive contained video documentation William had recorded, his soil testing procedures, his observations of crop failures, and most significantly, a heated confrontation with Hammond on the Mitchell property 3 weeks before the fire. The CEO's face was clearly visible as he issued what could only be interpreted as a threat. "You're making a serious mistake, William. Some things should stay buried. Think about your family." Jack's hands curled into fists at the sight of Hammond threatening his father. Chen laid a restraining hand on his arm. "This is powerful evidence, but we need to be strategic. Hammond has connections throughout the county, political, financial, legal. If we move too quickly, He'll bury this just like he tried to bury your father's discovery. As they discussed next steps, Lily suddenly tugged at Jack's sleeve, her face worried. Ranger's acting funny. The dog had risen to his feet, hackles raised a low growl building in his throat. He was staring at the office door with intense focus. Jack's combat instincts kicked in immediately. Something's wrong. We need to leave. Now. Chen understood the urgency without explanation. She quickly copied the USB contents to her secure server and returned the original to Jack along with the physical documents. There's a back exit through the service corridor. They slipped out just as voices became audible in the reception area, deep male voices asking pointed questions about William Mitchell's son. Jack caught a glimpse of sheriff's department uniforms as they ducked into the service hallway. The drive back to the farm required a detour to avoid a sheriff's vehicle parked near the main highway intersection. Jack's mind was racing, assessing threats and options with the clarity that combat situations had taught him. We can't go back to the warehouse. They'll be watching it. Are the bad men coming for us now? Lily's voice was remarkably steady, but her eyes were wide with fear. They're trying to scare us like they scared Grandpa, but we're not going to let them. As they approached the county line, a patrol car appeared behind them, lights flashing. Jack's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Running would only make them look guilty, but stopping felt equally dangerous. The deputy approached with one hand resting on his holstered weapon. Need you to step out of the vehicle, Mr. Mitchell. What's this about officer received a report about controlled substances being transported in this vehicle. Going to need to conduct a search. Jack recognized the setup immediately. They were planning to plant evidence. His military training screamed at him to neutralize the threat, but he was acutely aware of Lily watching wide-eyed from the back seat. Before Jack could respond, Ranger exploded into action. The dog lunged from the open window, not attacking, but creating a barrier between Jack and the deputy, his teeth bared in a silent warning. The deputy stumbled backward, his hand moving to his weapon. Call off your dog. Mitchell, in that crucial moment, a second vehicle appeared, a news van from the local television station, slowing as the reporter inside recognized a potential story. The deputy, suddenly aware of witnesses and cameras, hesitated. Jack seized the opportunity. Ranger back. The dog obeyed instantly, returning to the truck, but maintaining his vigilant stance. My daughter and I are heading home, officer, unless you have an actual warrant. The deputy glanced between Jack, the news van, and his own dash cam, visibly calculating the risks. With clear reluctance, he backed down. Keep that animal under control, Mitchell. This isn't over. As the patrol car retreated, Jack exhaled slowly, adrenaline still coursing through his system. Lily's small voice came from the back seat, equal parts frightened and awed. Ranger saved us. He knew the policeman was bad. Jack reached back to squeeze her hand. We saved each other. That's what family does. They couldn't return to the warehouse. It was too obvious a target. Instead, Jack drove to the Henderson farm, briefly explaining their situation. The elderly couple didn't hesitate, immediately offering their guest bedroom and a place to regroup. Within an hour, Jack had made contact with Marcus Powell, a former Army buddy now living in Boise. Marcus arrived by nightfall, his solid presence and tactical expertise a welcome addition. Jack explained everything they'd discovered, spreading the documents across the Hendersons' kitchen table. Marcus listened with the focused attention of a soldier receiving mission parameters. You're up against some heavy hitters, Jack. This Hammond guy has half the state legislature in his pocket. I know. That's why I need help. This isn't just about my father anymore. They're poisoning the land, destroying farms, and they killed my father to cover it up. I can't let that stand. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, emotionally exhausted by the day's events. Ranger lay on the floor beside her, his posture alert, even in rest, one ear constantly swiveled toward the door. Jack watched them for a moment, his resolve hardening. I need to find someone who can analyze these soil samples independently, someone Hammond can't intimidate or bribe. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I might know someone. Tech specialist named Sophia Kim used to work for the EPA before she went private. She's got the skills and the integrity for this. Jack turned to the Hendersons, who had been quietly supportive throughout the evening. They'll be watching your place now, too. I'm sorry for bringing this to your door. Mrs. Henderson straightened her shoulders with unexpected steel. William was our friend for 40 years. He would have done the same for us. You stay as long as you need. As plans formed and contacts were made, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced since returning to Idaho Hope. His father's legacy wasn't just the burned farm or the damning evidence. It was the truth waiting to be uncovered and the connections between people who still believed in standing up for what was right. Outside, the Idaho night spread its canopy of stars over farmland that had sustained generations. Land that was now under threat from corporate predators who saw only profit where farmers saw legacy. Jack Mitchell had come home to bury his father. Instead, he'd found a mission, one that would either redeem his family's land or make their enemies pay dearly for what they'd taken. The road ahead would be dangerous, but looking at Lily's sleeping form and the loyal dog guarding her, Jack knew with bone-deep certainty that some battles couldn't be walked away from. This was his ground to defend, his truth to uncover. The fight had just begun. Dawn broke over the Henderson farm with the harsh clarity of winter light. Jack stood at the window watching the pale sun climb over distant mountains. The household moved with the quiet efficiency of people accustomed to early mornings, Mr. Henderson feeding livestock, Mrs. Henderson preparing a simple breakfast, Lily still asleep on the fold-out couch. Only Ranger seemed as vigilant as Jack, the dog's amber eyes tracking his movements with unwavering focus. Marcus Powell returned from his perimeter check, his breath clouding in the cold air. They're watching the road about half a mile east, unmarked sedan, 2 men inside, sheriff's department judging by the radio setup, not making much effort to hide themselves. That's the point. They want us to know we're being watched. Jack studied the tactical situation with the detachment his military training had instilled. The Hendersons' farm offered temporary sanctuary, but it couldn't become their fortress. Every hour they stayed put, their hosts at increasing risk. They needed mobility resources and, most importantly, a plan that would shift them from reactive to offensive posture. Sophia Kim arrived shortly after noon, her compact hybrid car incongruous against the backdrop of weathered farm equipment. She stepped out with the brisk confidence of someone accustomed to navigating professional spaces dominated by men. Dark, intelligent eyes assessed Jack with scientific precision as she shook his hand. Marcus vouches for you, and that's good enough for me. Show me what you've got. In the Hendersons' kitchen, Jack spread out his father's evidence soil samples. Water testing data, the journal with its meticulous observations. Sophia examined each item with methodical thoroughness, occasionally muttering technical terms under her breath. Her expertise was evident in the precise questions she asked, the connections she immediately drew. Your father was right. These soil composition changes are consistent with microbiome collapse. But to prove it definitively, I'll need my equipment. A noise from the doorway drew their attention. Lily stood there in her rumpled pajamas, Ranger at her side. The dog had become her shadow, rarely straying more than a few feet from her. Jack felt a tightening in his chest at the sight of them, his daughter's small face solemn with worries that no child should bear the animal's protective stance beside her. Are you going to help us catch the bad men? Sophia's professional demeanor softened momentarily. She knelt to Lily's level, her voice gentle but unpatronizing. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Your grandpa was very smart to collect all these clues. Lily considered this with grave seriousness. He was the smartest person ever. Now Daddy has to finish his mission. This simple articulation of their purpose hit Jack with unexpected force. He turned away, momentarily overcome. His father had begun this fight alone, outmatched but undeterred. He wouldn't face the same isolation. As afternoon stretched toward evening, the team formulated their strategy. Sophia would take the soil samples to her private lab in Boise, running comprehensive tests that would provide irrefutable evidence of Nutri-Soil's destructive effects. Rebecca Chen would prepare legal documentation, building a case that could withstand the inevitable corporate counterattack. Marcus would tap his military connections, seeking allies who couldn't be bought or intimidated. The most immediate problem was getting access to unaltered samples of Nutri-Soil directly from the Green Tech facility. Without them, Hammond could claim Williams' samples had been contaminated or manipulated. We need to get inside their main processing center, Jack stated, spreading out satellite imagery Marcus had obtained. According to this, security is minimal. They rely on isolation and the perception of legitimacy. Standard perimeter fencing cameras on main entrances, 2-man security team at night. Marcus studied the images with a soldier's eye. Doable but risky, getting caught breaking into a corporate facility would play right into their hands. The conversation paused as Mrs. Henderson entered with coffee and sandwiches. Her weathered hands trembled slightly, As she set down the tray, the only outward sign of the strain their presence was placing on her household. My Harold had lunch with William every Wednesday for 40 years. He always said your father could see trouble coming before anyone else. That's why they weren't surprised when he warned them about that fancy fertilizer. Jack looked up sharply. Other farmers listened to him. Some did, some didn't. The Coopers over on Riverside Road followed his advice, refused to use the green tech products. The Johnsons and Martins switched over completely. You can see the difference now. The Mitchell and Cooper lands still grow decent crops with the right care. The others, she shook her head, grief momentarily overcoming her customary reserve. It's like the land is dying from the inside out. First year was a miracle, yields like nobody had ever seen. Second year still good, but needed more of that expensive fertilizer. Third year, nothing would grow right unless they bought the special treatments Green Tech was selling. Now most of them are so deep in debt to the company, they can't see daylight. Jack exchanged glances with Sophia, who nodded in confirmation. It matched the pattern his father had documented, a deliberate addiction cycle engineered into the product. That evening, after Lily had been tucked into bed with promises that Jack wouldn't leave while she slept, the team finalized their infiltration plan. Jack and Marcus would enter the Green Tech facility the following night, targeting the storage area where unprocessed Nutri-Soil components would be kept. Sophia provided specialized collection containers that would preserve the chemical integrity of the samples. Rebecca would remain on standby for legal intervention if needed. As the others settled into their borrowed sleeping arrangements, Jack stepped outside for a final check of the perimeter. The night was cold and clear, stars brilliant against the black expanse of the Idaho sky. Ranger materialized from the shadows, padding silently alongside him. "What did you see that night, boy?" "What happened to my father?" The dog's eyes reflected the starlight, ancient and knowing. Jack felt a strange certainty that if Ranger could speak, he would have volumes to tell about the night William Mitchell died. Instead, the animal pressed against his leg in silent solidarity, a warm presence against the chill of loss and uncertainty. Morning brought the necessity of the most difficult conversation. Jack sat at the edge of Lily's makeshift bed, gathering his thoughts as she blinked awake. Her small hand reached immediately for his, a gesture of trust that made his throat tighten. "I need to go away tonight, just for a few hours." The change was instant, fear flooding her eyes, her fingers tightening on his. "You promised not to leave." "I'm not leaving you, pumpkin. I'm coming back. But Marcus and I need to go get something important that will help us prove what happened to Grandpa." She absorbed this, her quick mind processing the implications. What if the bad men catch you? The question struck at his core fear, not for himself, but for what would happen to her if he failed. "Then Sophia and Mrs. Henderson will take care of you until I can get back." Lily sat up, her small face set with determination. She reached under her pillow and withdrew a carefully folded paper. She had drawn their small family, Jack standing tall in what appeared to be his army uniform, Lily beside him with exaggerated pigtails, and Ranger standing protectively near them. Above them all, floating in the sky like a guardian angel, was a bearded figure that could only be William. "It's a good luck charm. So you remember to come back to us." Jack enfolded her in his arms, breathing in the clean scent of her hair, storing the feeling of her small body against his chest. "Some things are worth fighting for, even when it's scary, but I promise you I will always come back." As darkness fell, final preparations were made. Jack and Marcus dressed in dark clothing, their movements economical and practiced as they checked their equipment. No weapons except a single combat knife each. This was about gathering evidence, not confrontation. Sophia would remain at the Henderson farm, with Lily running interference if local authorities appeared. Rebecca waited in Boise, ready with legal support if the operation went sideways. Ranger watched the preparations with unusual intensity, his posture communicating a restless energy. When Jack knelt to say goodbye to Lily, the dog whined softly, moving between them with obvious agitation. "I think he wants to go with you," Lily whispered, her eyes wide with sudden understanding. "He knows the way. He was Grandpa's helper." Jack exchanged glances with Marcus, who shrugged slightly. "That dog's got better instincts than some point men I served with. Might not be the worst idea." The decision made, they departed in Marcus's nondescript truck, taking a circuitous route to avoid the surveillance they knew was in place. Ranger rode in the back seat, his attention focused outward, scanning the darkness with more vigilance than either human. The Green Tech processing facility loomed against the night sky, its utilitarian architecture softened by darkness. Security lights cast pools of harsh illumination around the perimeter, creating contrasting zones of light and shadow. Jack and Marcus observed from a distance, noting guard movements and camera placements. They approached from the western edge, where a service road provided access to a secondary entrance. The fence here was standard chain link, easily scaled. Their timing aligned with the security patrol schedule Sophia had hacked from the company's system. They would have approximately 12 minutes before the next perimeter check. Jack went first, climbing with the fluid efficiency of his ranger training. Marcus followed, each movement controlled to minimize noise. They dropped to the inner side of the fence, immediately pressing into shadows to avoid the sweeping security cameras. Ranger remained outside the fence, watching. Jack had assumed the dog would wait with the vehicle, but as he motioned for Marcus to move toward the loading dock, a soft sound made him turn. Ranger was gone from his observation post. Scanning the perimeter, Jack spotted movement near a drainage culvert 30 yards south. The dog had found another way in a gap beneath the fence that human surveillance had missed. Before Jack could process this development, Ranger appeared beside them, materializing from the darkness with ghostly silence. The dog's behavior changed immediately, his posture lowering, his movements becoming deliberate and purposeful. He sniffed the air, then looked directly at Jack before moving toward a side entrance not indicated on their satellite imagery. Marcus raised an eyebrow, and his expression conveying clear skepticism. "You want to follow the dog?" Jack weighed the options quickly. Ranger had found his father's hidden safe, had warned them of the deputy's intentions, had consistently demonstrated awareness beyond normal canine perception. He knows something we don't. They followed Ranger's lead, staying close to the building's shadow. The dog moved with the confidence of familiarity, stopping at junctions to check for threats before proceeding. He led them not to the main warehouse as planned, but to a smaller auxiliary building, partially hidden by equipment sheds. A keycard reader guarded the entrance, its small LED glowing red in the darkness. Marcus produced a scanner designed to replicate access credentials, a piece of equipment from his less official military operations. The light flashed green and the door unlocked with a soft click. Inside, the air carried a chemical tang that made Jack's nose burn. Ranger didn't hesitate, moving directly through the dimly lit space toward a reinforced door at the rear. The sign read "Raw Material Storage, Authorized Personnel Only." Another key card reader, another bypass, and they were inside. The room was temperature-controlled, significantly cooler than the outside air. Stainless steel tanks lined the walls, each labeled with chemical compositions rather than product names. Ranger went directly to a section marked Proprietary Formulation SX7, his nose twitching at the sealed containers. "This is it." Jack worked quickly, using Sophia's specialized collection tools to extract samples from the tanks. Marcus photographed the facility layout and container labels, documenting the chain of evidence. The dog's sudden alertness was their only warning. His ears swiveled toward the main door, a low growl building in his throat. Seconds later, they heard voices approaching. The security patrol had changed its routine. Jack and Marcus extinguished their lights, pressing into the shadows behind the tanks. The door opened, revealing two guards conducting an unscheduled inspection. Their conversation drifted across the space. Hammond's got everyone working overtime since the break-in at the Boise office. Some files went missing, environmental reports, testing data, something about soil impact studies. The company's covering its tracks. Rebecca's legal probing had triggered an internal cleanup operation, which explained the heightened security and changed patrol patterns. They were boxed in with no clear exit route. Ranger solved the problem with calculated precision. The dog slipped past them, emerging from the storage room and darting visibly past the far doorway. The guards reacted instantly. What the hell was that animal breach in the east corridor? They pursued the apparent security threat, leaving the storage room momentarily unguarded. Jack and Marcus seized the opportunity, extracting the final samples and retreating the way they had entered. Outside, they scaled the fence and practiced synchrony, dropping to the external side just as alarms began to sound within the facility. They reached the vehicle and pulled away without headlights, using only moonlight to navigate the first quarter mile. No sign of Ranger. Jack scanned the darkness, concern mounting with each passing minute. Marcus vocalized what both were thinking. Could he have gotten caught inside? The dog had sacrificed himself to ensure their escape. The thought was unbearable. Jack was about to insist they circle back when a gray shadow materialized from the roadside brush, loping alongside the slow-moving vehicle. Marcus stopped, allowing Ranger to jump into the back seat. Jack examined the dog for injuries, finding only a small abrasion on one paw. He ran his hands through the thick fur relief, making his voice unsteady. Good boy, the best damn boy. The best. Ranger accepted the praise with dignified restraint, his mission-focused demeanor gradually relaxing as they put distance between themselves and the facility. His contribution had been pivotal. Without his guidance, they might never have located the raw chemical components or escaped detection. The samples were delivered to Sophia's lab by morning. Her preliminary analysis confirmed what William had suspected: Nutrisoil contained compounds designed to create a devastating long-term impact on soil microbiology. The initial application boosted plant growth dramatically while simultaneously killing beneficial bacteria and fungi essential for sustainable agriculture. By the third application, the soil was effectively sterilized, unable to support growth without continued chemical intervention. It's brilliant in a purely evil way, Sophia explained, her face illuminated by computer screens displaying molecular structures. They've engineered an agricultural opioid. First hit gives you an amazing high, gets you hooked. Then you need increasingly expensive doses just to function at all. Jack absorbed this with growing anger. How long before the land recovers? Her expression sobered. Years, maybe decades. Some of these compounds have half-lives measured in years. They're not just damaging the current crop cycle, they're poisoning the legacy of every farm that uses their products. The significance wasn't lost on anyone. This wasn't just corporate malfeasance, it was the systematic destruction of agricultural land, the deliberate creation of dependency, the corruption of something fundamental to human survival. Their temporary sanctuary at the Henderson farm ended abruptly the following day. Sheriff Donovan arrived with 2 deputies, a search warrant in hand, and thinly veiled hostility in his bearing. Anonymous tip about stolen property possibly connected to recent industrial espionage. Jack stood on the porch, physically blocking access to the house where Lily remained inside with Mrs. Henderson and Sophia. Rebecca had coached him on how to respond to such a scenario. Under whose authority was this warrant issued? I'll need to have my attorney verify it before you enter the premises. Donovan's face darkened with anger. This isn't a negotiation, Mitchell. Step aside or face obstruction charges. The confrontation balanced on a knife's edge. Jack knew resistance would only provide justification for escalation, but surrender meant exposing Lily and their evidence to immediate threat. The stalemate broke with the unexpected arrival of Howard Cooper, the neighboring farmer Mrs. Henderson had mentioned. His weathered pickup screeched to a halt behind the sheriff's vehicles, followed by 3 more trucks driven by other local farmers. They formed a loose semicircle, creating a barrier of vehicles and bodies. Cooper approached with deliberate steps, his voice carrying across the yard. What seems to be the problem here? Sheriff, the addition of witnesses changed the dynamic immediately. Donovan's aggressive posture moderated his voice, shifting to a more professional register. Executing a lawful search warrant. Mr. Cooper, standard procedure, on the Henderson property. Based on what evidence? Cooper positioned himself beside Jack, a silent statement of solidarity. The other farmers spread out, not interfering, but clearly observing and documenting in the interaction with their cell phones. The sheriff, suddenly aware of the optics and potential social media exposure, retreated to a more procedural approach. We'll need to search the outbuildings and vehicles. Jack nodded curtly. The outbuildings only. The house is off limits without specific probable cause, which your warrant doesn't indicate. The search proceeded under the watchful eyes of the assembled farmers. Finding nothing of interest in the barns and equipment sheds, the sheriff's team eventually departed with veiled warnings about continuing the investigation. As the dust from their vehicles settled, Jack turned to Cooper with genuine gratitude. The older man shrugged, his weathered face creasing. William was right about that poison they're selling. I've got 20 acres still growing decent crops because I listened to him. The rest of these fellows weren't so lucky. They're watching their land die while drowning in debt to Green Tech. Word's getting around that you're picking up where your father left off. This unexpected alliance expanded rapidly over the following days. Farmers who had initially avoided Jack now sought him out, sharing stories of declining yields, mounting debts, and increasing pressure from Green Tech to sell their struggling properties. A pattern emerged. Hammond's company had systematically targeted the region, introducing Nutrisoil at discounted rates, then gradually increasing both price and required application amounts as the soil degraded. Victor Hammond's response was swift and multi-pronged. Green Tech issued a press release denouncing irresponsible rumors about their products, citing university studies and agricultural experts who vouched for Nutri-Soil's safety. Local media heavily dependent on green tech advertising revenue presented the company line without critical examination. The economic leverage Hammond wielded became increasingly apparent. Banks accelerated loan repayment schedules for farmers known to be associating with its jack suppliers, delayed deliveries of essential equipment parts. Small conveniences suddenly became bureaucratic nightmares. The pressure peaked when Howard Cooper was arrested outside the local feed store, charged with possession of unregistered firearms and outstanding warrants for disturbing the peace. The fabricated charges were transparent to anyone familiar with Cooper's standing in the community, but they served their purpose, a warning to others who might consider joining Jack's growing coalition. Jack, Marcus, and Sophia gathered at Rebecca's office to address this new development. The attorney laid out the legal landscape with unvarnished clarity. They're escalating because you're gaining traction. Hammond knows you have damning evidence, the samples from their facility, your father's documentation, the soil analysis results. He's trying to isolate you again, cut off community support. Sophia nodded, adding her technical perspective. The lab results are conclusive. Nutri-Soil contains compounds explicitly designed to degrade soil microbiology over time. It's not an unfortunate side effect. It's the primary business model. Create dependency, acquire land when farmers can't sustain the increasing chemical requirements. Jack paced the small office, tension radiating from his frame. We need to get Howard out, make it clear that intimidation tactics won't work. Rebecca was already drafting legal motions. The challenge is timing. Cooper could be processed and transferred to county facilities before we can intervene effectively. And Hammond surely has contingency plans if this approach fails. They formulated a two-part strategy. Rebecca would pursue legal channels to secure Cooper's release, while Sophia would hack into the sheriff's department systems to find evidence of the fabricated charges. Marcus would organize the growing network of supportive farmers to create public pressure for Cooper's release. Jack returned to the Henderson farm that evening to find Lily and Mrs. Henderson baking cookies in the kitchen, flour dusting their clothes and laughter brightening the air. The domestic scene struck him with unexpected force, this momentary bubble of normalcy amid the escalating conflict. Lily ran to him, her small hands leaving flour prints on his shirt as she hugged him. We're making Grandma cookies. Mrs. Henderson is teaching me Grandpa's favorite recipe. The elderly woman smiled, her earlier anxiety temporarily set aside. William always said a proper chocolate chip cookie could solve half the world's problems. The serious discussions could wait until the child was asleep. Later, after Lily had been tucked in with promises of more baking adventures tomorrow, Jack briefed the Hendersons on the latest developments. Their continued willingness to shelter his family despite increasing personal risk humbled him. Mr. Henderson listened gravely, then voiced what all were thinking. They're going to keep coming at you sideways, Jack. Hammond won't risk direct confrontation while you have that evidence, but he'll chip away at your support, isolate. You make it impossible to function. Mrs. Henderson's voice was soft but firm, which is exactly what he tried to do to William. But your father didn't have what you have, people standing with him. The conversation was interrupted by frantic barking from outside. Ranger, who had been dozing near Lily's bed, was suddenly alert, rushing to the front door with bristling hackles. Jack followed immediately, sensing something wrong in the animal's behavior. This wasn't standard alert barking, but a desperate communication. He opened the door to find Ranger frantically circling, rushing a few yards toward the barn, then returning to tug at Jack's pant leg. The message couldn't have been clearer if spoken in English. Follow me. Now. Jack grabbed a flashlight, following as the dog led him at a run toward the edge of the property where a small wooded area bordered the fields. Ranger plunged into the trees, moving with purpose through the undergrowth until he reached a small clearing. There in the beam of Jack's flashlight was Lily's pink backpack abandoned on the ground. Ice flooded Jack's veins. He sprinted back to the house, bursting through the door with barely controlled panic. She's gone. Lily's not in her bed. The Hendersons' confusion was genuine. They had checked on her less than an hour ago, found her sleeping soundly. A rapid search of the house confirmed the unthinkable. Lily had somehow left without anyone noticing. But why would she have ventured out alone after dark? Ranger provided the answer, leading them back to the clearing where the backpack lay. Beside it, partially obscured by fallen leaves, was a cell phone, not one Jack recognized. He picked it up, finding a recent text message displayed on the screen. "We have your daughter. Drop the investigation if you want to see her again. Come alone to the old mill. No police." The world tilted beneath Jack's feet, rage and terror colliding in a nauseating wave. Someone had taken his child, the one person he had sworn to protect above all others. Hammond had crossed the final line. Marcus arrived within 20 minutes of Jack's desperate call, his expression hardening as he assessed the situation. "They'll expect you to come alone, emotional, unprepared. That's exactly what we won't give them." The old mill referred to an abandoned grain processing facility 10 miles north, a derelict industrial complex that had ceased operations decades earlier. Sophia pulled satellite imagery identifying potential entry points and vantage spots. Rebecca contacted trusted state-level law enforcement contacts. Hammond's influence might extend to the local sheriff, but it had limits. Jack moved with cold precision, the soldier displacing the terrified father. He studied the approach routes, calculating angles and timing. His voice when he spoke held the deadly calm of absolute focus. "They took my daughter to control me. They'll discover that was their final mistake." Ranger paced anxiously, clearly distressed by Lily's absence. The dog had become her fiercest protector, his loyalty extending beyond his original master to encompass the child who carried William's blood. Jack knelt beside him, looking directly into the intelligent amber eyes. "We're going to find her. Together." The approach to the mill was executed with military precision. Jack and Marcus established observation positions, confirming the presence of two vehicles parked behind the main structure, a black SUV with tinted windows and a mud-splattered pickup similar to the one that had watched the Mitchell property days earlier. Ranger, released from his restraint, disappeared into the shadows. Jack had complete confidence in the dog's ability to navigate the complex undetected. His earlier performance at the Green Tech facility had demonstrated his almost preternatural stealth. They watched as a figure emerged briefly from the mill's loading dock, a bulky man in a hunting jacket smoking a cigarette while scanning the approach road. He spoke into a radio, then returned inside. The kidnappers were maintaining communication, expecting Jack's arrival. From their vantage point, Jack could make out dim light through the building's broken windows. Lily was in there, frightened and alone among strangers. The thought threatened to shatter his tactical focus, but he channeled the emotion into cold determination. The plan was simple but effective. Marcus would create a diversion at the far side of the complex, drawing attention away from the loading dock. Jack would enter through a partially collapsed section of the roof they had identified from the satellite imagery. Ranger would locate Lily, while state police, positioned in a loose perimeter, would move in once they had confirmed her safety. As they prepared to move, Jack's phone vibrated with a text message from an unknown number. "Time's running out. Come inside now or deal's off." Jack nodded to Marcus. "It's time." The diversion began with the precise timing of veteran operators, a series of small explosions near the parked vehicles, harmless, but attention-grabbing. Shouts erupted from inside the mill as several figures rushed toward the disturbance, weapons visible in their hands. Jack moved like a shadow across the open ground, reaching the mill's eastern wall undetected. He scaled the rusted exterior ladder to the roof access point, dropping silently into the dark upper level. The building's interior was a maze of abandoned machinery and collapsed walkways. He navigated by sound, following the voices echoing from the main floor below. Through gaps in the flooring, he spotted three men, two by the loading dock entrance responding to the diversion, and one remaining beside a small figure seated on a wooden crate. Lily, her dark hair unmistakable, even in the dim light. She wasn't crying or panicking. Her small face was set in an expression of controlled fear. Her father's daughter, even in crisis. Jack positioned himself directly above, preparing to drop down, when the third man moved away from Lily. He didn't have to wait long. A commotion erupted from the loading dock as Ranger materialized from the darkness, snarling and charging toward the men guarding the entrance. They reflexively raised their weapons, momentarily forgetting their hostage. In that critical moment, Jack dropped from the ceiling, landing behind the remaining kidnapper. One precise strike to the base of the skull, and the man crumpled without a sound. Jack swept Lily into his arms, feeling her small body trembling against his chest. "Daddy, you came?" Her voice was a choked whisper, equal parts relief and residual terror. "I will always come for you. Always." He moved quickly toward the side exit, Lily clinging to him like a koala. Outside, state police were converging on the mill, their approach lights intentionally dimmed to maintain the element of surprise. Jack delivered Lily to a female officer waiting in an unmarked vehicle, instructing her to retreat immediately to the secure location they had established. Lily's fingers dug into his arm as he prepared to release her. "Don't leave me again." The plea tore at his heart, but Jack knew the threat wasn't fully neutralized. "I need to help Ranger and make sure the bad men can't follow us. Then I'll come right to you, I promise." Understanding flickered in her eyes, the same comprehension of duty and necessity that he had often seen in his father's expression. She nodded, releasing her grip with visible effort. "Be careful. Ranger too." Jack returned to the mill just as the state police stormed the building, apprehending the remaining kidnappers without significant resistance. These weren't hardened criminals, but local muscle-for-hire farmhands and unemployed laborers paid to frighten and intimidate. They quickly surrendered when faced with genuine law enforcement authority. Ranger appeared at Jack's side, a slight limp in his gait, suggesting he had encountered resistance during his distraction maneuver. Jack examined him carefully, finding a shallow cut along his flank painful, but not serious. He knelt beside the dog, pressing his forehead briefly against the animal's. "You saved her. You saved all of us." The subsequent interrogation of the kidnappers yielded the final piece of the puzzle. They had been hired through intermediaries, but one name emerged repeatedly: not Hammond, but Richard Donovan Jr., Sheriff Donovan's son and a Green Tech regional manager. The local connection explained how the kidnappers had known the Hendersons' farm layout, how they had accessed Lily despite the household's vigilance, how they had expected to operate with impunity. State police expanded their investigation to include the sheriff's department, placing Donovan Sr. on administrative leave pending review. Howard Cooper was released from custody within hours, the fabricated charges dismissed without comment. By morning, the landscape had shifted dramatically. Local media, sensing a change in prevailing winds, began asking questions about green tech that would have been unthinkable days earlier. Farmers who had hesitated to align with Jack now contacted him openly, sharing their experiences with Nutri-Soil and their financial entanglements with Hammond's company. Jack reunited with Lily at a safe house secured by Rebecca's connections, watched as the initial shock of her ordeal gradually subsided. The resilience of children remained a constant source of amazement. By afternoon, she was drawing pictures with supplies provided by their host, Ranger, maintaining his vigilant position beside her. When Hammond finally reached out, it wasn't through threats or intermediaries, but a direct call to Rebecca's office. Jack took the call, with the attorney present recording the conversation as advised. Hammond's voice carried the forced casualness of a man attempting to project control while losing it. "This situation has escalated unnecessarily, Mr. Mitchell. I'm sure we can find a mutually beneficial resolution." Jack's response was measured, each word precisely chosen. "You had my child kidnapped. There is no mutual resolution possible. An unfortunate misunderstanding. Overzealous local elements acting without corporate authorization. Green Tech categorically denies any involvement. The denial was expected, the corporate distancing textbook." Jack pressed the advantage. "We have the soil samples from your facility. We have the chemical analysis proving deliberate soil degradation. We have your internal documents outlining the dependency cycle business model. And now we have testimony connecting your company to kidnapping and intimidation." Hammond's composure fractured, his true nature emerging in a burst of vitriol. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I've built this company from nothing, revolutionized agricultural efficiency. Some collateral damage to outdated farming operations is the price of progress. Is that what you call murder, poisoning the land, destroying family farms? Progress?" The silence on the line stretched for several seconds before Hammond responded, his voice regaining its corporate smoothness. "I'm authorized to offer a settlement, $3 million for the Mitchell property. All legal matters dropped, a fresh start for you and your daughter, away from painful memories." The attempted bribe confirmed everything Jack had suspected about Hammond's character. The man genuinely believed everyone had a price, that principles would always yield a profit. He had miscalculated badly. "My father wasn't killed for his land. He was killed because he discovered the truth about what you're doing to all the land. That truth doesn't have a price tag." Hammond's final threat came wrapped in the language of regretful inevitability. "Don't be a fool, Mitchell. Companies like Green Tech don't lose these fights. We have resources you can't imagine. Legal teams that will bury you in paperwork for decades. Think about your daughter's future." Jack ended the call with quiet finality. "I am thinking about her future. and the future of every child who deserves to inherit something more than poisoned earth. The confrontation had crystallized the way forward. This wasn't just about justice for William Mitchell or even about saving the family farm. It was about exposing a systematic attack on the foundation of agricultural independence, the viability of the land itself. Hammond had weaponized chemistry against the very soil that sustained communities, turning a fundamental resource into a corporate hostage. As dusk fell over the safe house, Jack stood at the window, watching Lily and Ranger playing in the secure backyard. His daughter's laughter floated through the evening air, a sound of resilience and possibility that reinforced his resolve. Whatever came next would require all the resources, courage, and community support they could muster. Hammond would deploy his full corporate arsenal, legal maneuvers, media manipulation, economic pressure, perhaps even more direct threats. But Jack Mitchell was no longer fighting alone. He was surrounded by a growing alliance of farmers, scientists, legal experts, and ordinary citizens who recognized the existential nature of the threat. His father had begun this battle in isolation. Jack would finish it with an army at his back. The final phase was about to begin. The morning light streamed through Rebecca Chen's office windows, casting angular patterns across the war room they'd assembled. Maps and documents covered the conference table, the accumulated evidence of William Mitchell's final battle now weaponized for justice. Jack stood at the center, military training evident in his posture as he assessed their position with tactical clarity. "We strike simultaneously on 3 fronts," Jack has said, tracing their planned assault routes on the satellite image of Green Tech's facility. Rebecca files the legal motions the moment the protest begins. Sophia releases the soil analysis findings to environmental authorities. And our farmers create a visible presence that can't be ignored by media. The strategy had evolved from understanding their enemy's tactics. Hammond relied on isolation and intimidation, using his influence to neutralize opponents one by one. Their counter was solidarity, a unified front too broad for even his resources to silence. Marcus Powell entered with news that shifted their timeline. "Deputy Wilson contacted me this morning. He's ready to turn state's evidence about your father's death." Jack's pulse quickened. What exactly does he know? He was on duty that night. Overheard Sheriff Donovan discussing the sabotage of the electrical system with Hammond's security chief. Says he didn't participate, but didn't report it either. Now he's facing accessory charges if the investigation connects him. Rebecca's expression remained professionally guarded, but her eyes revealed cautious optimism. "His testimony alone wouldn't be enough, but combined with your father's evidence, we have a compelling case for premeditated murder." Marcus had one more revelation. Wilson had access to some of Green Tech's communications with county officials. There's something bigger behind Hammond's land grab. Geological surveys discovered significant rare earth mineral deposits throughout this region, especially concentrated under your family's property. Hammond's soil destruction scheme isn't just about agriculture, it's preparation for mining operations worth billions. The pieces locked into place. William's murder, the systematic attack on local farms, Hammond's obsession with acquiring the Mitchell property, all part of a larger exploitation strategy masked as agricultural innovation. Lily sat cross-legged on the office couch, carefully coloring a banner that read, "Save Our Farms." After her kidnapping, Jack had been reluctant to let her out of his sight. The safe house remained their home base, but she had become an unexpected symbol of their cause, the future they were fighting to protect. She looked up, her expression containing a seriousness no 7-year-old should possess. "Mrs. Henderson helped me make something else for tomorrow." She pulled a tablet from her backpack and pressed play. On screen appeared William Mitchell, recorded months before his death, standing in his fields at sunrise. "This land isn't just dirt and crops." William's voice resonated with quiet authority. "It's a living system, generations of care, a future we borrow from our children. What we put into it today determines what comes out tomorrow." Jack stared at his father's image, throat tightening. "When did you come?" "Grandpa was teaching me about farming before he went away," Lily explained. "Mrs. Henderson found his old videos and showed me how to put the important parts together. I thought people should remember why he fought." Her initiative stunned Jack. This child who had lost so much had created something powerful from fragments of memory, a testimony that crystallized everything at stake. That evening, Jack sat with Lily on the porch of their safe house, Ranger alert at their feet. The dog had become her constant companion, a living link to William, and a guardian whose senses extended beyond human perception. Is it going to be scary tomorrow? Lily's question contained no fear, only practical assessment. Jack considered how to answer truthfully without burdening her with adult anxieties. There will be many people and it might get loud, but you'll be with Mrs. Henderson and Ranger will stay right beside you. She nodded, processing this information with characteristic solemnity. Then, with the lightning transitions of childhood, her expression brightened. When we win, can we rebuild our house, a real house, not the warehouse? The question caught Jack unprepared. In the intensity of their campaign against Hammond, he had thought little about what would come afterward. The Mitchell farm remained as William had left it, a charred monument to corporate vengeance, soil damage but not beyond recovery. Yes, we'll rebuild, better than before, and we'll help Grandpa's land heal. Can I have a yellow bedroom and a special place for Ranger inside? The simple domestic questions struck Jack with unexpected force. This was what Hammond had tried to destroy, not just William's life and legacy, but the possibility of ordinary happiness, of yellow bedrooms and dog beds, of a family continuing on land that had nurtured generations. You can have any color bedroom you want, and Ranger has earned his place by the fireplace. Dawn broke clear and cold on the day of reckoning. The coalition moved with military precision, each component synchronized for maximum impact. Farmers from across the county converged on GreenTech's main facility, their tractors and trucks forming a peaceful but immovable blockade of access roads. Each vehicle displayed hand-painted banners detailing the damage Nutrisoil had caused to their lands. Jack drove with Marcus, Lily, and Mrs. Henderson, following in a separate vehicle with Ranger. Rebecca had gone ahead with the legal team prepared to file their comprehensive claims the moment the protest began. Sophia coordinated from her laboratory where environmental officials were conducting final verification of her findings before issuing emergency orders. As they approached, Jack saw media presence already forming, not just local outlets, but national news vans with satellite uplinks. The story had transcended regional interest, capturing the broader narrative of corporate malfeasance versus rural America. Hammond's attempt to dismiss them as backward farmers had backfired, transforming into a David versus Goliath narrative that resonated far beyond Idaho's agricultural community. The blockade formed with practiced efficiency, creating a human barrier around the facility without trespassing or providing justification for police intervention. Howard Cooper unfurled the massive banner across vehicles, "GreenTech kills farms, the truth about Nutrisoil." Media crews swarmed toward them, microphones extended. The story they presented was comprehensive: soil samples, chemical analyses, financial records, showing GreenTech's pattern of acquiring farms after their lands had been degraded. Lily's edited video of William appeared on tablets passed among reporters, his authentic voice providing emotional context that data alone couldn't convey. The protest had been underway for less than an hour when GreenTech's response appeared, a phalanx of private security vehicles approaching from the facility's secondary access road. Jack noted their quasi-military bearing, the earpieces and tactical vests, suggesting former law enforcement or military backgrounds. Hammond had hired muscle beyond the local authorities he traditionally relied upon. The security team's leader approached the protest line, his manner professional but intimidating. "This is private property. You're obstructing business operations and creating a public disturbance. Disperse immediately or face removal." Jack stepped forward, meeting the man at the midpoint between opposing lines. "We're exercising our right to peaceful protest on public roadways. We have permits filed with state authorities who have jurisdiction here." The security chief's expression hardened. "Mr. Hammond would like to speak with you, alone. A chance to resolve this before escalation." The invitation was transparently a trap, an attempt to separate Jack from his support network. But it also represented an opportunity to confront Hammond directly with witnesses and media present. "I'll meet him, but not alone, and not inside." The terms were negotiated with terse efficiency. Hammond would come outside with his security detail. Jack would bring Marcus and Cooper as representatives. The meeting would occur in neutral ground between the facility gates and protest line, within sight of media, but beyond their hearing. Victor Hammond emerged from the building 10 minutes later, corporate polish slightly diminished by circumstances. His tailored suit seemed incongruous against the backdrop of farm equipment and protest signs. His smile remained fixed, but his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator assessing threats. This is quite a spectacle, Mitchell, but ultimately counterproductive. I've made generous offers to resolve our differences privately. Jack maintained the controlled calm that had served him through battlefield crises. This stopped being private when you murdered my father, when you poisoned the land, when you had my daughter kidnapped. Hammond's expression flickered at the direct accusations. All unfortunate misunderstandings that could be rectified through proper channels. Accusations without proof create liability for those making them. We have the proof, your soil destruction formula financial records showing your land acquisition strategy testimony about the fire at my father's farm. It's all being submitted to authorities as we speak. For the first time, genuine concern crossed Hammond's features. He had expected threats and demands, not a coordinated legal and public relations offensive. Green Tech employs hundreds in this region. These reckless allegations threaten their livelihoods. Is that what William would have wanted, economic devastation for his community? The invocation of his father's name ignited a flare of anger that Jack carefully controlled. My father wanted truth and justice. He wanted land that would sustain families for generations, not be destroyed for corporate profit. This crusade will cost you everything, Mitchell. I have resources you can't imagine, legal teams that will tie this up for decades, political connections that go beyond this backwater county. Jack stepped closer, his voice low enough that only Hammond and his immediate security could hear. Deputy Wilson provided interesting context about those mineral surveys under our property. This was never about agriculture for you, was it? You're destroying farmland to get at what's underneath. Hammond's composure cracked, true surprise registering on his face. You understand nothing about progress. Those minerals are essential for technological development, far more valuable than wheat and potatoes. One way or another, that land will serve its highest purpose. Its purpose is to feed people, not shareholders. Hammond sneered. Your father thought the same way. Look what happened to him. The admission hung in the air between them. Jack didn't react visibly, knowing the statement alone wasn't legally actionable without witnesses. But it confirmed everything he had suspected. Hammond had personally ordered William's murder. Their confrontation was interrupted by commotion from the facility entrance. Sheriff Donovan and deputies had arrived, but instead of approaching protesters, they headed directly toward Hammond. The sheriff's expression contained none of his usual deference to the corporate executive. Victor Hammond, I'm serving you with a warrant for questioning regarding the death of William Mitchell and environmental crimes against Idaho. Hammond's shock was genuine. Donovan, have you lost your mind? This is absurd. Call your superiors immediately. The sheriff's weathered face remained impassive. My superiors issued the warrant, sir. State police are taking jurisdiction due to evidence of local corruption, including my own. Jack watched with stunned realization as Donovan voluntarily placed himself in custody alongside Hammond, surrendering his badge and weapon to a state police officer. The sheriff turned toward Jack, his expression a complex mixture of shame and relief. My deputy came forward with what he knew about your father's death. I'm turning myself in to testify about my role covering it up. Some mistakes you can't fix, but you can stop making them worse. The unexpected development created a ripple effect through both the protest line and Hammond's security team. The corporate CEO was being led to a police vehicle, his imperious demands for attorneys ignored by officers executing a properly authorized warrant. His security personnel, suddenly unsure of their standing, began a strategic withdrawal. As Hammond was placed in the cruiser, his gaze locked onto Jack with undisguised hatred. This isn't over, Mitchell. My company has the best lawyers in the country. Jack didn't respond to the bravado. The legal battle would indeed be protracted, but the public exposure couldn't be undone. Hammond's carefully constructed image as an agricultural innovator was crumbling in real-time broadcast across national media. The truth about Nutrisoil would spread to every farming community where Green Tech operated. The protest transformed into impromptu celebration as news spread of Hammond's detention and emergency orders being issued against Green Tech operations. Media crews captured emotional reactions, the embraces between families who had nearly lost everything to Hammond's predatory business model. Jack sought out Lily in the crowd, finding her beside Mrs. Henderson's car with Ranger standing guard. Her face lit up as she spotted him making his way toward her. Did we win, Daddy? Did we stop the bad men? Jack lifted her into his arms, her small body fitting against his chest in a way that still amazed him. This perfect trust, this absolute connection that transcended their years apart. We've started to. There's more work ahead, but we've made sure everyone knows the truth now. Ranger circled them anxiously, his posture communicating tension at odds with the celebratory atmosphere. Jack recognized the behavior from their previous encounters. With danger, the dog sensed something others had missed. Following Ranger's gaze, Jack spotted a figure moving with deliberate purpose through the crowd. Richard Donovan Jr., Hammond's connection to local enforcement. His hand was concealed inside his jacket expression, rigid with desperate anger as he approached. Jack set Lily down and positioned himself between her and the approaching threat. Ranger moved with matching speed, placing his body protectively in front of the child. Richard halted several yards away, his hand emerging to reveal a pistol held low against his leg, partially concealed, but clearly visible to Jack. You've destroyed everything. My father's career, my position at Green Tech all gone because you couldn't leave well enough alone. Jack kept his voice steady, conscious of Lily behind him and the volatile situation surrounding them. Put the gun down, Richard. There are dozens of witnesses here, police everywhere. You'll only make things worse. Worse, Richard's laugh held no humor. My father's going to prison. Hammond will sacrifice everyone beneath him. I've got nothing left to lose. The crowd began to notice the confrontation, people drawing back to create empty space around the standoff. State police were moving toward them, but too slowly to intervene before Richard could fire. Before Jack could implement a diversion, Lily's small voice called out from behind him. My grandpa said people always have choices. Richard's eyes flicked toward her, momentarily confused by the child's intervention. Lily stepped slightly to the side, still protected by Ranger, but visible now. She held up her tablet, William's face filling the screen. He said, even when you think you've lost everything, you still get to choose what kind of person you want to be. The simple wisdom momentarily broke Richard's focus, creating the opening Ranger needed. The dog launched forward with explosive speed, not attacking directly, but circling behind him, snarling with a ferocity that caused him to spin reflexively. In that critical moment, Jack closed the distance, his hand clamping around Richard's wrist, forcing the weapon toward the ground. State police swarmed around them, separating the struggling men and securing the weapon. Richard's rage dissolved into hollow threats as he was handcuffed and led away. His final opportunity for vengeance neutralized by the unexpected alliance of a child's wisdom, a dog's loyalty, and a soldier's training. Jack turned back to find Lily still standing where he'd left her. Ranger already returned to her side, pressing against her leg in reassurance. Is it really over now? Jack knelt to her level, gathering both her and Ranger into an embrace that communicated more than words could convey. The most dangerous part is over. Now comes the hard work of healing what was broken. In the days that followed, the full impact of their victory began to emerge. Victor Hammond remained in custody, denied bail due to flight risk and the severity of charges against him. Sheriff Donovan's cooperation opened floodgates of information about corruption extending throughout county government. The mineral rights scheme came to light, revealing Hammond's ultimate plan to turn farmland into open-pit mines once farmers had been driven off their devalued property. Most significantly, Green Tech Industries was placed under emergency oversight, its operations suspended pending comprehensive investigation. The evidence William Mitchell had gathered, combined with Sophia's analysis and testimonies of affected farmers, triggered multi-state inquiries into wherever Nutri-Soil had been distributed. Rebecca's legal expertise proved invaluable as class action lawsuits formed against Green Tech, seeking compensation for damaged land, lost crops, and the deliberate deception that had led farmers to poison their own soil. The documents William had preserved provided the foundation for cases that would likely take years to resolve, but would eventually deliver financial accountability. Throughout these developments, Jack maintained focus on his core priority, creating stability for Lily. They continued living at the safe house until immediate threats had been neutralized, then made the momentous decision to return to the Mitchell farm. The warehouse would serve as temporary home while they began rebuilding the main house. The arrival of spring marked a turning point in the land's recovery. 6 months after Hammond's arrest, the first experimental plots showed promising results under Sophia's remediation protocols. The soil wasn't fully healed, but beneficial microorganisms had begun reestablishing their complex networks aided by carefully selected cover crops and organic amendments. Howard Cooper spearheaded the formation of a sustainable agriculture cooperative with the Mitchell Farms serving as its experimental center. Farmers who had used Nutri-Soil now shared resources and knowledge implementing restoration techniques that would benefit the entire region. Weekly gatherings combined practical agricultural planning with the social connections that sustained rural communities. By summer, the foundation for the new Mitchell House had been poured and framing had begun. Jack incorporated elements of his father's design while updating systems for efficiency and sustainability. Lily had been intimately involved in planning her yellow bedroom, positioned to catch morning sun, a special alcove near the fireplace designed for Ranger's comfort. The dog had aged visibly during these months, gray spreading through his muzzle, but his amber eyes remained alert and his devotion to Lily unwavering. He patrolled the boundaries of their reclaimed territory with the satisfied precision of a guardian whose mission continued beyond his original master's passing. On a warm August afternoon, 1 year after their confrontation at GreenTech's facility, Jack stood with Lily and Sophia at the edge of their largest test plot. Wheat seedlings stretched toward the sun, their vibrant green a testament to the land's resilience. "How do the microorganisms know what to do?" Lily asked, crouched beside Sophia, as they examined a handful of soil through a portable microscope. "They remember," Sophia explained. "The soil has a kind of memory stored in its structure, in the seeds that waited for the right conditions and the fungi networks that survived even the worst chemical assault. Given the chance, these systems want to rebuild themselves." Jack watched his daughter absorb this knowledge, her face wrapped with concentration. William had recognized her innate connection to the land, had begun teaching her its fundamental principles before his death. Now that education continued through this unlikely family, they'd formed scientists, farmers, legal advocates, and a child whose future would be shaped by their collective stand against destruction. Marcus approached from the direction of the partially constructed house where he'd been helping with electrical installation. A year of peace had softened the military sharpness of his bearing, though his observant awareness remained unchanged. State prosecutor called. Hammond's pretrial motions were denied, judges allowing all of William's evidence. Trial starts next month. Jack nodded, absorbing the update without allowing it to dominate his thoughts. The legal proceedings against Hammond and his associates would continue for years, but the immediate danger had passed, the truth exposed beyond any possibility of suppression. Hammond sat in a cell while William Mitchell's legacy flourished in the open air. That reversal represented a justice more profound than any court could deliver, the vindication of one man's stand against corporate power, his warning transformed from a silenced cry into a movement for change. "Daddy, look!" Lily's excited voice drew him back to the present. She was pointing toward the farm's northern boundary, where a strip of land had been left untreated as a control in Sophia's experiments. A thin line of green was visible there, unexpected growth in the area they'd considered most severely damaged. "Some plants are stronger than others," Sophia said, adjusting her glasses. "Pioneer species can establish themselves even in hostile conditions, creating microenvironments where more sensitive organisms can gradually return. Like the first settlers here," Lily observed, making the connection immediately. "Grandpa told me about them. They had to make the land ready for everyone else." Jack exchanged glances with Sophia, both struck by the child's intuitive understanding of ecological succession and its parallel to human history. William's teachings had taken root, growing through his granddaughter's natural intelligence. As evening approached, the Mitchell farm welcomed a gathering that embodied the community's ongoing recovery. Howard Cooper arrived first, his truck leading a procession of farmers for their weekly cooperative meeting. Rebecca Chen followed shortly after, legal documents requiring Jack's signature tucked under her arm, the formal establishment of the Mitchell Agricultural Research Foundation. They assembled in the partially framed great room, the absence of walls lending their meeting an openness that seemed fitting for their transparent approach to shared challenges. Maps were spread across makeshift tables, different colors indicating the progress of soil remediation across various properties. The technical discussions gave way to more personal exchanges, news of births and weddings plans, but for the upcoming harvest festival, offers of equipment sharing and labor assistance. Jack observed the interactions with quiet satisfaction, recognizing the restoration occurring within the community itself, trust and cooperation rebuilding alongside the soil. Mrs. Henderson approached as the farmers began drifting toward their vehicles, carrying a carefully wrapped package. Found this in Harold's things yesterday. Thought you should have it. Inside was a framed photograph. Jack had never seen William Mitchell and Harold Henderson as young men standing proudly beside William's father in front of the original Mitchell farmhouse. 3 generations of farmers connected by land and purpose, their faces reflecting the hard-earned satisfaction of those who work in partnership with nature. William always said farming wasn't just about growing crops. Mrs. Henderson said, her weathered hand resting briefly on Jack's arm. It was about growing possibilities. After the visitors had departed and Lily had fallen asleep, Jack returned to the construction site alone. The frame of the new house stood in silhouette against the star-filled sky, its incomplete form somehow more evocative than a finished structure, a visual representation of possibilities unfolding, a future actively being created rather than merely inherited. Ranger materialized silently beside him, their evening patrol, a ritual that bound them as surely as shared combat binds soldiers. The dog's vigilance remained undiminished, though his movements had slowed with age and the lessening of immediate threats. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Jack said softly, running his hand through the fur, now liberally streaked with gray. "About the safe, about Nutri-Soil, about what Hammond had done. You were keeping watch until I returned." The dog's amber eyes reflected starlight containing that unsettling intelligence that transcended normal canine awareness. In moments like this, Jack could almost believe that William's spirit had somehow merged with his faithful companion, continuing his guardianship through unwavering loyalty. Ranger's head suddenly lifted, ears pricked towards something in the darkness beyond the construction site. Jack tensed automatically, his body responding to the dog's alert posture. But instead of growling, Ranger trotted forward with purpose, disappearing briefly into shadows before returning with an object in his mouth. He placed it carefully at Jack's feet, a small bright green shoot with roots still attached. Jack examined it with puzzled interest, noting the robust root structure and healthy coloration. Ranger watched expectantly, clearly conveying that this delivery held significance. Understanding dawned as Jack recognized the shoot's origin. It had come from the far corner of the property, an area they hadn't yet treated with Sophia's remediation protocol. Against all expectations, the land was beginning to heal itself, finding its way back to fertility through natural processes accelerated by their careful stewardship. This discovery embodied what William had always maintained, that the earth possessed its own intelligence, its own drive toward balance. Given proper care and protection from exploitation, the land would eventually recover from even deliberate damage. He pocketed the small plant evidence he would show Sophia in the morning. Through the warehouse window, he could see Lily sleeping peacefully, her expression untroubled by the anxieties that had marked her young face during their months of struggle. She had witnessed both the worst and best of humanity, greed and corruption, counterbalanced by courage and solidarity, destruction followed by renewal. Jack thought about the journey from soldier to farmer, from seeker of justice to builder of legacy. The military had taught him to fight external enemies with tactical precision. William had shown him how to recognize more insidious threats and combat them with unwavering principle. Both lessons had proven essential in defeating Hammond's attempt to weaponize chemistry against rural independence. The final concrete pour for the foundation was scheduled for the following week. Jack had placed a time capsule in the excavation, William's journal photographs, spanning 4 generations of Mitchells, and a letter Lily had written to her future self describing their struggle and her hopes for the farm she would eventually inherit. It was a bridge between past and future, a testament to continuity that transcended individual lives. In the morning, he would continue the work of rebuilding physical construction alongside the more complex restoration of ecological balance and community trust. The legal battles would proceed at their own pace, gradually holding accountable those who had conspired against William Mitchell and countless other farmers. Sophia's remediation techniques would spread beyond their county, offering hope to agricultural communities facing similar threats. Hammond had mistaken William's solitary resistance for vulnerability, failing to recognize that true strength often appears as quiet persistence, as principled refusal to surrender what matters most. The corporate executive had commanded vast resources and influence, yet had been ultimately defeated by a farmer's journal, a loyal dog, and a community that found its collective voice. As Jack prepared to return to the warehouse, a shooting star traced a brief, brilliant arc across the Idaho sky. Lily had once asked if stars could be people who had died watching over those they'd left behind. He'd explained the science of meteorites while respecting the metaphor's emotional truth. Tonight, he allowed himself to imagine his father witnessing their progress. The healing land, the rising house frame, the growing child who carried his legacy forward. "We're getting there," he said softly to the night. "It won't be exactly what you built, but it will honor what you protected." Ranger looked up at him, then toward the constellation Orion that William had often pointed out during evening walks. The dog's gaze seemed to track something beyond human perception, a dimension where past and present existed simultaneously. Then he turned decisively toward the warehouse, looking back with clear expectation. Jack followed their shadows merging in the moonlight. Through the small window, he could see Lily had shifted in her sleep, one arm extended as if reaching for something. She had become the unexpected center of their restored world, the reason that justice mattered beyond vengeance, the purpose that transformed recovery from abstract principle to daily necessity. Hammond had sought to create dependency to render the land itself hostage to corporate chemistry. In fighting against that future, Jack had discovered a community's capacity for resilience, for adaptation, for collective resistance against seemingly overwhelming power. William Mitchell had died protecting a truth that threatened corporate power. His son had ensured that truth would not remain buried but would flourish in the open air, transforming from one man's warning into a movement for agricultural independence. The story would be told and retold how a loyal dog led a returning soldier to evidence that eventually toppled a corrupt empire, how a child's innocent questions clarified moral imperatives, how a community rediscovered its collective strength when faced with existential threat. Jack's last thought before sleep was not of Hammond or corporate schemes or legal battles still to come. It was of the wheat seedling Ranger had delivered, one tiny plant finding its way through poisoned earth towards sunlight, the embodiment of a resilience that existed before human industry and would endure long after corporate balance sheets were forgotten. In that persistent green shoot lay the true victory, not just over one man's greed, but over the hubris that believed nature could be permanently subjugated to profit. The battle was won, the healing had begun, and the story of how they had reclaimed their future from those who sought to control it through destruction would live on, taking root in fertile ground.